Hello everyone, this is Dan with the Spiritual Underground Podcast, coming to you on a Sunday morning. Going to talk a little bit about nicotine cessation today and what we call simply the quit. When I type it, I always capitalize it. There's certain words I'm beginning to capitalize that in my vocabulary that mean something to me, and my quit means something to me, and as small as a demonstration it is, it's still a demonstration that I make to myself, not for anybody else necessarily, to show that I really am in this thing and that I mean it. Today we will have I'll just go ahead and do the regular commercials. 12-Step Spiritual Recovery is a book by James Christopher Cone. It is a 12 steps for everyone. I'm more and more unabashedly promoting that in my words, and frankly it's a master's level course in the 12 steps. You can do the 12 steps with that book on your own if you want. There are a couple of steps that require assistance, but for the most part it's a point by point way to get a lot of to receive a lot of power through using the steps and practicing those principles in your life. I like to say it's the great compendium, the magnum opus, the Optimus Prime version of the 12 steps. So go get that on Amazon. 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cone. Spiritualunderground.org is the website that supports this podcast. You can go there and see show notes and other tidbits. There's a contact me page. You can see pictures of the folks that are on the podcast to put that face with the voice. That is spiritualunderground.org. dtmww.net is my little handyman woodworking business. If you're in the Louisville metropolitan area, contact me at dan@dtmww.net. Facebook pages support these things. And there's a website out there, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery, Instagram, Facebook. We have a bunch of stuff to support all these movements as one needs to have in our lives today if you're going to be doing this. So check that stuff out. If you have any problem finding that, you can find me easy enough through one of those pages and the contact me button, and I will point you in the direction if I can possibly help you in any manner. I am doing that with my life today. The music wrapped around here, I haven't decided. I've been using Jim's music around the podcast. I suppose that's what I will do again. I think it's fitting and it works well. So it's
and it rocks.
And it rocks. That's what I was getting ready to say. The tempo suits the fury of a quit.
Oh yeah.
So today, Jim, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, Dan. Thanks for having me back.
And every time I speak into my phone voice to text and I say Gemini, it does the astrological symbol Gemini with a G.
And I'm a Libra.
Well, it would have been very interesting had you said I'm a Gemini. So today we're going to do, we just kind of talked about it. We're going to do a little quitting 101. We've had the honor, I'll say it's an honor and a privilege to have some new quitters in our group lately. And one of them, Tony, you guys heard his story. As a matter of fact, I looked down today and he is 150 days quit today. We have another brother, Marshall. He is, you've heard his story on the podcast, and he posted a day 99 this morning. In science and in the nicotine quitting world, that around that 90 to 100 day mark, and really the 90 day mark in most places, and for whatever reason in the nicotine world we celebrate zeros, that day 100 is the big first big mile whammy marker where I hate to use these terms, but they are fitting. You're kind of out of the woods. Now you're not, because it's a lifelong thing. We are never cured, but it is a big stepping stone, and I think it's important that we celebrate these things in our lives, and for whatever reason, zeros are as good a reason as any other. And in that same vein, the terminology that I learned was that is the first floor, and when you hit 200, it's the second, and when you hit 1800, it's the 18th floor. So kind of like that terminology for some reason too. It fits me. So we're going to do a little quitting 101, and hopefully if you're looking to stop your nicotine usage, this will be of some value to you. One thing about it is we tend to think that we're unique enough that I'm having feelings nobody else has when I'm doing this, and am I going crazy? Is there something wrong with me? Some of those things are things we want to dispel today because, before the show, as Jim and I were talking, the nicotine quitting, I'm probably more proud of my nicotine quit than I am of my booze and my dope. My ass was on fire in the dope and the booze, and I had some other consequences that actually caused me to need to do that. And in the quit, it was a thing that I did for me, and I was not having any health issues. I was, any more than nothing drastic. I didn't get a warning from a doctor or anything like that. I just one day was sitting across the table with a sponsee talking about improving the quality of our life through seeking to improve the quality of our life in recovery by continuing to take steps that make me a better version of me today than I was yesterday. And I spit into my dip cup, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks how hypocritical that felt at that moment. And I took steps from that point to try to find a way to stop. And higher power led me to a way to do it. And here I am, some 700 and what is my number today?
It's 774, isn't it?
Well, you would know better than I because you keep track of these things so good.
I'm sorry, 775.
775. I thought that's what it was. So some 775 days later, remaining nicotine free. And that is not... that is no gum, no lozenges, no vape, no nothing, no nicotine. There are some people that, I'm guilty of swapping devices and continuing to use the drug. And today I am completely free. So let's get rolling and talk about some stuff. Jim, I've burned up quite a few minutes here of airtime. Let's hear from you for a minute.
Well, I think basically what most people need to know that we're not just escaping the delivery mechanism, right? It's the smoking, the burning embers going into your lungs. Of course, that's bad. The poisons, the chemicals that they treat the tobacco with. If we're dipping it, it's going straight into our bloodstream. Yeah, that's bad. And when you actually do finally get the doctor's note, if you will, the warning, that's when it's too late. They've already detected something, right?
Yeah.
Be it in the lungs or, some growth in your mouth or, God knows the kind of bad stuff that can happen to us. So there is no better time to quit than now. Don't wait for the doctor. I guess that's my point. I started seeing the warning signs myself. And I got tired of the coughing, the hacking, the sore gums. Because yes, as you recall, as everybody knows, I did it all.
Yeah,
I was smoking, dipping, vaping. I had the nicotine lozenges, all on me at any given time or within arm's reach. So it was necessary for me to quit before I got that doctor's note that nobody wants to hear. The big C word.
Right.
And it's worse than the other C word. This one is fatal,
Yeah.
So we can't talk about that first decision enough, in my opinion. It's critical that you do it, and you said it. This quit was for you, and that's kind of the litmus test that I give a whole lot of new people. It's just, why are you quitting? And basically the answer we're looking for is, I'm quitting for me. And it could be covered up with a doctor's note, or I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired all the time,
Yeah. The reason why is, and when the flip side of that is when the answer to the question of why are you quitting ends up being somebody else or something else. Usually that's not the step that we're looking for.
No, it's kind of a warning sign.
Yeah, if you're doing it for somebody else, then the probability of you staying quit drops off pretty quickly.
Yeah, and so I think what a lot of people worry about, whether they're quitting for themselves or somebody else, it always comes back that first couple days. Am I normal? What the? I'm feeling this and that and the other thing, and obviously I'm the only person that has ever felt this stuff in the entire history of quit.
Yeah. It's interesting how our egos will separate us from that, and believe that we're that unique that that we're feeling something nobody else has felt. And what a relief it is when you begin to get into these support groups and get some people around you that can affirm that this is normal. This is normal.
And there's nothing more not rewarding, relaxing, reaffirming. And there's a great word. Nothing more reaffirming than having somebody that has been quit for thousands of days or even hundreds, saying, "Look, brother, it's okay. This is normal. Your shaky hands. I can't concentrate. I can't even carry on a normal conversation with my dog, let alone a coworker." I mean, that's the kind of stuff that first 72 hours, just kind of having somebody tell you it's normal, kind of takes the sting off,
Yeah. And I will put in here, too, that neither Jim nor I are doctors or have any special training in this other than the experience we have gained by doing this and doing it with others. We're sharing our experience, strength, and hope only. So, yes, when we quote certain things like timelines and things like that, that is our experience.
And by all means, if you feel something that is physically or psychologically just beyond the scope of normal or what anybody tells you is normal, quit listening to us and go straight to a doctor.
Exactly.
Because I'm not a doctor, but I do know quit. But not from a let me diagnose you with something. It's not me.
Yeah. Well, my first, the first few days, and if I recall, it was a Sunday night when I was sitting with this gentleman that when I got hit over the head with a frying pan and with the hypocrisy of my sitting there dipping and telling this guy about preaching the word of putting down things that are bad for you. And I went 3 days before actually doing anything about it. I was totally on my own. I didn't tell anybody I was quitting. I just began to do that, and my first attempt of first thing coming to my mind was to use a substitute, and what do we call it? NRT, nicotine replacement therapy. Which, frankly, again, I say this about the 12 steps and drinking. There are other ways to stop. I know other people. I have a very dear friend of mine whose quit date is like a month after mine, and he didn't use the tools I used. There are other ways to quit. What I will tell you is this is the only way I know how to quit. There may be other methods, and nicotine replacement therapy has apparently worked for some people. What I found is I was unable to moderate any other chemicals that I ever used, but for some reason I had it in my head that I could moderate nicotine, and it would come to me very quickly as those first few days that language hit my heart, that I was unable to moderate other things. Why in the world did I think I could moderate this?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I come from a long line of nicotine addicts. Brother's a nicotine addict. Both my parents nicotine addict. My grandparents nicotine addicts. Being in the Army, I was surrounded by nicotine addicts. None of these people ever called themselves addicts.
Nope.
Well, my brother got smart.
Well, yeah, but that was after he was after he drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak.
And so hat tip to my brother. He got smart before I did. And he showed me the way to the support group version of quitting, because everything else I tried was bogus. It just didn't work. As an addict, you hit the nail on the head. I could not moderate. And I had no accountability to keep me from the chemical that I wanted. And it just wasn't the delivery system. Sure, I enjoyed smoking, but I was loving the chemicals.
Yeah.
The nicotine is what I wanted, and I didn't care how I got it.
It's interesting to say that, that we enjoyed it. That feels so weird. It feels weird to me. I did a little YouTube video of sucking on a pacifier.
I remember that.
And that really, that was partly for me because that's the way I looked at that, and I like, well, Jim, I just enjoy sucking on my pacifier. I'm not putting it down.
But we all got it. We knew exactly what you were doing. That's why it was so funny.
Yeah. Well, you're an acronym guy coming from a military background, and we use that NRT, and the acronym for what we're doing here is MST, MSG, which is like the chemical that you put on meat to tenderize it. It's interesting, but it's a mutual support group. It's when people who have done things together, we have a common problem and a common solution. That's also what we say in 12-step circles. And that's the same thing that works here. We have a common problem and a common solution. And by doing it together, right off the bat, that thing of no accountability, it wasn't that I was dodging accountability. I just didn't know how to get it. There was, I had a few friends that would support my stopping using nicotine, but nothing like the group I have around me today, where I actually have a focused group on helping me stay accountable, and we do that by our daily promise every day, amongst other things, of one day at a time posting a number that is my promise to me, my higher power, and my brothers and sisters, and quit, that I won't use just for today.
Yeah, it's not a new or novel concept.
Nope.
I think it was one of the times that I really made an honest-to-God effort. It was after my first divorce. I realized I needed somebody. I didn't realize the word accountability, even though accountability is big military word, right?
Right, yep. Got to be able to depend on your guys there.
Yeah, accountability of your people, accountability of your equipment, accountability of resources, you name it. And so I was familiar with the word, but I'm like, okay, dude, as I'm sitting at the bar smoking a cigarette with my buddy, I'm like, I got to quit. You want to quit? Well, yeah, I want to quit. Granted, at the time, these are drunken promises.
Yeah, barstool promises.
Yeah, we were dancing on the edge of what was going to work, and that was a quit buddy. Somebody that when you're wanting to buy that pack of cigarettes, he's the dude that's going to come up and whack you upside the head, call you an idiot, and say, look, if you cave, I'm going to cave too. So fuck you. I'm not going to let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we were on the verge of doing what was going to work long before these quit sites showed up, long before GroupMe. We had the right idea in our heads. And that is, I can't do this by myself. I want somebody to kick me in the butt when I feel weak.
Yep. Accountability, I just know without a shadow of a doubt that I am unable to do this stuff on my own. I won't do it. I can't imagine, if you were in a spot where you couldn't catch on and actually have some support, I think you'd be doomed to continue to use. Without the accountability, and then like I've been using this word a bunch lately, is this collateral benefit rather than collateral damage. The collateral benefit of this whole accountability thing is that I made a whole batch of friends, of new friends that I get to have in my life, and that was something else that I did for a long time, was kept you outside. Kept a close hoop on my personal business. and didn't let anybody in. And today's the opposite, man. It's just so much better way to live, to allow people into my life than that other deal where I felt like I had my shields up all the time.
Yeah, I'll keep you at arm's length. You're going to only know me by the Colonel.
Yeah.
I don't know what clicked in my head that went, you know what? It was this quit, Dan. It was definitely this time when I decided it really was for me. And I had to let that last bastion of security, I had to let it go. And I let it go, and that's when you learned who I really was. That's when Billy found out who I really was, and God help me, I'll mention Steve too. I don't know why he doesn't deserve it. Well, he does to a degree.
Yeah,
kind of bitter pill. But I opened up to you guys, and that's what solidified. I no longer had any place to hide, you know. So
I recall.
And go ahead.
One of the things that stuck in my head was, as I was, I do that woodworking deal, and I've been making tokens for people for their sobriety milestones. And when we were coming up on 100 days in our group, I wanted specifically to make certain friends of mine those, and I wanted to surprise them. And so most of the people, I'd send a little text that said, "Hey man, you just gotta trust me on this. Don't look too deeply into it, but I'd like to have your address."
I remember that.
And so most people, gave it up pretty freely. It took a few minutes for Jim to come around and go, "Okay, I'll trust you," and do it, because you did. You had some walls up that and I think even to this day, there's probably a lot of people who don't know your real first name.
And good. Not good. Well, given the history,
the people I'm speaking of, yes, good.
Oh wow! But yeah, that was that was a turning point for me. Letting down that last wall, and because the other times I tried to quit in those social environments, I didn't tell anybody anything. So
yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, I found it hard to make positive changes in my life when I had my walls up. Even like going to the gym and doing things like that. If I don't have somebody alongside, I'm just not going to stick it out that long.
The rest of the time you're just fronting, right?
Yep. So those first 3 days, let's run to do you're a lot better at this than me. These timelines, and I know that there's no hard and fast rules in any of this. It's just guidelines, and what it is also just some experience that we have of our own quit, and then also watching other people have tough times during certain timelines. And that's one of the things also that's odd about nicotine is that like breaking the habit of using drugs and alcohol, although it still comes around and knocks at my door now and again under certain circumstances. Nicotine has a whole different way of doing that. We call it the Nick bitch. And you can be like, you can have like and again, you're better at the timelines than me, but let's just say, you could be cruising along in your around, what's an easy window? I know there ain't no easy one, but let's say 40s. I don't know. 40 seemed like I don't recall a lot of catastrophe in my 40 days.
40s was good.
And you're approaching that halfway mark to 100, which kind of feels like okay, man, I'm actually gonna get to the halfway point. And you have these days of like in my head I'd go, I got this thing whipped, right? I'd be like, everything is going good. And it's not really so much that I've got it whipped, but more like I feel that I made a big breakthrough, that I punched through some timeline, and that it was going to, it's only going to get easier from here. And then you turn the corner, man, and pow, she's knocking at your door hard again, And I don't remember that specific thing with other substances at the intensity than I remember it with nicotine. Because my mood would just go completely sour, and that's unlike me. That's contrary to my nature in recovery, of being in a shitty mood. And all of a sudden, I'd find myself in our circle in 12-step recovery. We call it irritable, restless, and discontent.
Understatement for some of the stuff we go through.
Yeah. Words sometimes aren't good enough to fit what that is. But yeah, I would just be any little thing. My wick would be so short on any little thing. That's the irritability. It didn't make any difference if Lord, if I stump my toe or something, I'm ready to, put my fist to a wall. Small little bumps would do that. And then like the discontentedness, that's just constantly feeling like there wasn't, something was missing. Something is missing. This is not enough. And I would and I found myself overeating. I felt myself compensating in other areas. And of course the restlessness is just that not being able to sit still. Cannot focus on anything, trying to sit and look, and sit down at my desk in the morning at work, and a day would go by and I had not hit a lick. I look back at my day and I'm like, man, I didn't do shit today. It's interesting how it grabs you later on down the, after you've got some days under your belt. And hell, it still does.
Yeah, it does. It's just not as bad, of course. But, Dan, I remember, of course, like we talked about with the 12-step observations, you might not have seen it as well as I did, but I watched, like, one night, you're just happy-go-lucky. You're chugging along on your quit. Then the very next morning, I'm reading that you just burned every bridge in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what happened? How could this possibly happen? And it's because the Nick bitch snuck up on you. And, she had her way with you. And
yeah,
it got to you, and you lost faith in the program. You lost faith in your ability to stay quit. Not to the point of caving, but just to the point of, I don't need this crap.
Yeah. What I actually thought is I thought I could go it alone. It was, I don't need you guys. That was a bigger, and I'll just take a minute to speak to that. And I can't really even, there was no specific thing that happened. Typically we bantered around, and something triggered me, and I got my feelings hurt. Somebody said something that made me mad, and I grabbed my ball and went home. And in that, and I can remember the weekend. The weekend was almost like a blackout. It was like, I would call it a gray out, because it's foggy, and it was even foggy then. And I did some stuff the night before. I'll speak to that in just a second, that I didn't really remember. It felt like a dream. It didn't feel real. And there was a quarterly going on, which is every quarter our local, and maybe they do it other places too, but our AA circle, our AA community has a big meeting in a gymnasium where there's a few hundred people. And they talk about some business of AA, some things that are going on in the community, and then they bring in some pretty big speakers and have them share. And I remember one person I went with was Quentin. Quentin and Chase and I were heading out on a Saturday night to have a good evening of recovery, and had two sponsees with me. Should have been a good night. And I got home later on, and it was someplace around 11 p.m. or something like that. And I had been talking to Joel. I've been talking to Cavman that night, texting him during this meeting. And I didn't even pay attention to the meeting. I know that that night I was completely out inside my head. I went to this thing and I sat there and I didn't pay attention to any of it. I don't even know what was going on. And I know that my two guys were with me also spoke to it, that said, well, are you okay, dude? And of course I'm fine. And I got home and logged on to that site, and something tripped my whistle, and I told everybody to fuck off and signed off of the site. We'd have that intro where you could go in there and kind of do a little journaling, personal journaling on your journey. and I deleted every single post in my intro. I blocked some 80 people or so in my telephone. All the contacts I had from that group, I went in and blocked them all. I went on Facebook and unfriended everybody that I had friended through that avenue. And I thought I was like, fuck y'all. I don't need you. And I went to bed that night, and I woke up the next morning with some kind of like hangover of not really knowing what happened. I had to like log on, and I'm like, I'll be damned, I did do that. And joke around, do you know how long it takes to block 80 people on your telephone?
Dude, you were determined.
It takes almost exactly the same amount of time as it takes to unblock them.
Well, okay, that too. But you were on a mission. You were on a mission to erase this part of your history for whatever reason.
And I'm sure if and see, this is where I was talking before the show where things get foggy. But there was one person I didn't block, and it was by accident. And that person called me on Sunday morning and got through to me, and I actually answered the phone. And I didn't want to answer the phone. 12 steps has got me answering telephone calls where I used to wouldn't. And I picked up the telephone, and that guy talked me off the ledge.
Yeah, I can't remember who that was.
I think it was Steve.
It might have been. I know I was able to reach you, but it could have been after him.
Yeah, it was as I started unblocking numbers after talking to Steve, and then I did an apology video. But that whole event really shook me as far as like the depth that I think it was, if I remember right, it was someplace like 30 to 32 days.
It was right around your 30s, yes.
Yeah, and it was a deal where I did think that I could do it on my own. I know I was isolating. That was an attempt to begin isolating. Luckily, it was less than 24 hours. I didn't even isolate for a day. Come back to my senses and got back on it. I'm certain, as I'm certain that I'm standing here doing a podcast with you, that it would have, if it had gone on for more than a couple of days, I would have caved.
Yeah, and by isolating, just for those people that, I mean, when you start closing off all your access and isolating yourself from your methods of support and accountability, basically you're setting yourself up for a cave.
Yep.
And I was scared as hell for you. I had already felt a kindred or a brotherhood with you. And when you burned all those bridges, and a bridge to me included, that really shook my quit too. And I'm 10 days ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, not this guy. I need this guy. I need the dog. I need Probe, and I need Serains. I need these guys. And to lose you, that really hurt. Not said as a guilt thing.
No, I understand, man. Actually, it warms my heart. To be honest, that's a blessing. What you just said.
And you're still here. What? Oh my God! 2 years later.
Yeah, no doubt.
But anyway, the whole point on this, folks, is what I've seen, and some people are different, but I've seen enough people go through the 20s, their 20-day count, into their early 30s. It, for some reason, has some history. It's a tough transition. You're out of your honeymoon period where, hey, I feel great. I finally kicked this bastard, or you know what? I don't need all this other support. I did this primarily on my own.
Yeah. The physical portion of it is pretty much left you by that time.
It's gone.
So you're not, the kind of the habit side of it, the physical habit of it is way, is behind you. But the chemical, and again, this is my frame of reference, so I always connect things to this. Is like in the 12-step into things. I may have stopped the. We call it the allergy because I'm not using. Once I start using, I'm gonna continue to use. But the obsession, the chemical in my brain, still, my brain still wanted that back.
Yeah, you weren't rewired yet. And that is essentially what the nicotine cessation is. You got to rewire.
You do.
Your brain is just so jazzed up on this shit because you're constantly on it. And it doesn't know what to do without the nicotine. And so that opens a void, and a nick bitch begins to whisper. And she whispers hard. Actually, she ain't whispering in the 20s and 30s. She's screaming.
Yeah.
And every time I've quit, every time for me, again, just for me, and, I had plenty of guys I've seen go through it, that is just a terrible time. It's definitely better than the first 72 hours, right?
Absolutely.
I was curled up in a fetal position for 8 days. Not 3 days, but 8 days for me.
Yeah.
Because I just figured if I sleep through the whole damn thing, I can wake up and it'll go away. That's really what I hope for.
Yeah, that was speaking of that, just to touch on it, sleep was always an escape mechanism for me whenever I was in a pinch. I would always fall back to wanting to sleep in order to not feel, and it was, problem is I can only sleep so long.
Yep.
When I was a child, when I would get in trouble, that's usually what I would do. I would go to my bed and pull the covers up over my head, and if I wasn't sleeping, I was pretending to be.
Now, you think about it, what are we actually doing? We're healing, right?
Yeah.
Well, what is the instinctive approach of the body?
Yeah, to rest.
To rest. And you just wake up, hopefully you wake up the next day feeling better, if not, cured, but obviously with nicotine that ain't going to happen, but we still want it to.
Yep.
Greetings, folks. This is the Colonel. You may remember me from episode 126 about nicotine recovery. Well, I'm here with this week's public quit announcement for those of you wishing to add nicotine to your recovery roster. This PQA is brought to you by DTM Enterprises and the Fury Council. Well, my friends, I've recently experienced a few events that were worthy of any discussion on recovery or nicotine quit. Demonstrations that even after 780 plus days of quit, the addiction remains a clear and present danger to each of us. We are never cured nor immune. I had a young friend of mine facing a particularly difficult time with his professional life. The job was shaking him up pretty good, but we were all still managing to joke about it without really thinking any better. The next morning, I looked at his pleas through fresh eyes. He was back out on the quit ledge without even realizing it. Our simple recollections about quit and offers to help were enough for my dearest friend to make his own decisions. Then recently, I too was faced with a few of the demons from my earlier quit days, causing me to begin craving harder and becoming more combative in my responses, almost reliving those days when the rage was still getting the better of me. I had obviously lost track of my quit plan, though it hadn't needed any dusting off in almost 400 days. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong by letting this happen. Thanks to my quit brothers for providing a few choice words of concern and commitment, and a couple well-placed kicks to my testicles, I got back on the right path, but with the single warning whispered in my ears by the lingering addiction saying, I will always be there waiting for you in these moments of weakness. Count on it. Well, my friends, this has been your PQA for the week. Take it from Dan and I. It all gets better, and you only need to worry about staying quit today, one day at a time. Quit on and carry on, my friends. Colonel No Cope out.
Did you take time off work to do it?
No, I was lucky to have a more flexible kind of work schedule.
So you just, what I say is you put a tourniquet on the work just to keep it from bleeding out, and focused on those days of getting through that suck in the beginning.
Well, I'm lucky that, see, I work in a construction environment, right? No thin skins in construction.
Yeah.
So if I ended up answering the phone and saying, hey, fuck you, this is the way it's going to happen, well, it's kind of, not forgivable, but expected. You see what I'm saying? So I did, if I had gone into any other office, like a cube farm environment, a corporate level position, I never would have survived it. I would have been tearing heads off.
Yeah.
The whole narrative stories would have been true. I would have been shooting people, ripping heads off, and tossing them over the cubicles for their friends to look at. That's just how bad I had it. Not everybody has it that bad, of course.
Well, I don't have the job I had when I was quitting anymore, so I can say that for weeks I would throw a guess out that my productivity probably dropped down into like the 30% or something at best.
As well as your fuckets too. You had a lot of fuckets.
Expound on that.
Okay. Fuck it. I don't care what they think.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck it. I got a meeting. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to post to you guys.
Yeah, I did, and I could be in constant contact with other nicotine quitters, and I had that ability, and I pretty much did it.
Yeah.
And I needed that really bad, and just as another tool, just as that exposure to that level of contact with other people doing the same thing. I didn't have that in my 12-step circles, but today I actually do. That's one of the things that nicotine quitting. That's one of the tools that was added to my toolbox through quitting, was that, like our group meets and stuff, where I have the ability to be in contact with people anytime, and I can do it in somewhat of a group setting too, because there is still, I'm a lot better at it today. It's not that, but certainly in the beginning, reaching out to people one-on-one is very difficult. I feel like I'm bothering you. The Nick bitch tells me not to bother him. He's probably working, but in this group me, in these kind of environments, I can reach out to a bunch of people, and that guilt ain't laying on me. I can. Yeah. It's like standing in a room of friends rather than one-on-one.
Yeah, you send out a single, I need help.
Yeah.
As opposed to calling 20 different people. You just put it out there one time, and somebody's going to answer.
Yep. And you get, and multiple will, so you end up getting some various angles and support. And, sometimes it's just, love you, brother. That's all the support I need. I'm not necessarily looking for an answer to my problem,
or somebody to coddle your balls. You just, damn it, somebody responded.
Yeah.
And in those first 30 days, that is more critical, in my opinion, than any other thing you can do. Is just to reach out and say, hey, today sucks.
Yep. It's the most powerful tool we have. Is our friendships and that brotherhood, that you got somebody who will support you.
Now, here's during the same time, since we're gonna, we mentioned occasions that run up to the 50-day mark. I think what really begins to eat away at our ability to stay quit, our commitment to it, is losing the urge to ask for help. We'll call it complacency. You think you have it, right? You got this nailed. Nobody's really given me anything that I can't give to myself. By God, if that's not an addict phrase,
yep.
There isn't one better written. And complacency has killed more quits. I've watched it. I watched it with me, but I've watched it for, if I haven't seen 100 people do it, then, I'm a fake.
Yep.
But just eventually going, honeymoon phase is over. I feel great. I've got everything I need. I don't need all your drama. I don't need your accountability. Just waking up in the morning, posting my promise. This is a bunch of hogwash. And whammo, you see that bastard back in about 30 days posting his day one.
Right. Yep. Yeah, we tell, I remember people talking about not having time to post roll. And it's like, really, dude? You can't take a minute in the morning? And especially like, and I kind of go, when I push my chips to the middle of the table in these things, I do it in an addict fashion to extreme. So, I still text a bunch of people. I post my day count in probably 6 different group meets, the people that don't even care. But, you could whittle that down and just post in the one spot that's your hat hanger. And that's sufficient, and that's a 30-second deal at worst. I sit down and pee. I can do it while I'm sitting down and peeing.
Well, Billy did it during his morning shit.
Yeah.
For the rest of us, it was wake up, piss, post. For Billy, it was wake up, sit down, take a shit, and that was his time.
Yeah. Yep. So it doesn't take long to be accountable. In a 12-step world, we say, so I parallel once again, the same thing is what we do is we stop going to meetings and we stop calling our sponsor. Mm-hmm. And here we drop off, because I actually, now that I have a couple people that are quit with me here locally in my 12-step circles, I have some local accountability. Coach East, Brad, when I still remember I was talking to him, and he came in there a couple months after we did, and he said, "Hey, I saw you're from New Albany. I live in Floyd Knobs," and so he lives 15 minutes from me.
Awesome.
Yeah, which was cool. But for the most part, my nicotine cessation accountability is spread across the country, and it's every bit as effective, as my neighbors. It's interesting that that technology allows us to do that.
Yeah, finally, an occasion where social media actually is doing something good.
Yeah, I hear it a lot. I get a lot of negative energy from folks in the last few days, even specifically about social media. And in a couple places in my life, it's frankly required. And even though our group meets are not social media in the regard that it's public, because they're private chat groups, it still is to some extent that kind of thing. And I promote a couple things on social media, so if you don't have that, it's a requirement today for me in my life. So the other side of that is that when I hear the negativity, I have to instantly reject it, or else, because I can't let that in my life. I need to continue to promote my woodworking business and the podcast and things like that, and I need this nicotine quit thing, because if I turned off my accountability across that, again, it would have the same result we were just speaking of.
Yeah, it's pros and cons to everything out there, and what's it come down to? For everything, moderation, right?
Yeah.
And since we can't moderate our addictive behavior for our substances, we need social media. But there's some people that live on social media, and it's almost a problem in and of itself for them. And I that's obviously a topic for a different time. But that's what turned me off about outlets like Facebook and areas where I could have gotten more support than I could ask for. I was shutting it off because of the negative Nellies out there, which is also obviously what killed our support at the other, at KTC.
Yep.
It's a shame. The negativity destroyed an otherwise honorable, right? outlet. The site had the right things in mind, the right platform, and it was exactly what I needed. Exactly pretty much what everybody there needs. But yeah, the few spoiled it.
Yeah, and I take that on myself today. I've learned most of the time for this guy, when I cast that out there, usually I can hold a mirror up because I was as big as instigator as anybody. And I pushed buttons in a different way, So I have to take the good with the bad in most places in your life. There's no place you can go that doesn't have that element.
Yeah, it takes two to tango.
Yep. And it doesn't matter if I go to the grocery store or the library or to a bar, I'm gonna run into all types of people who are going to cross section me, and I'm gonna my hackles are going to get raised over certain things no matter where I go.
This is a great segue into another topic I wanted to talk about with Quitting 101. We've already hit a couple of these, but the excuses.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, because remember that time we made that list of all the reasons why I don't want to be a part of this anymore? Yeah. Remember that?
Yep. All the reasons to cave.
Yeah, all the reasons. Essentially, that's what it boiled down to.
Yeah, but they don't look like that. They look like other things. It looks like it's taking time away from my wife. It looks like it's, we could start going on and on about the different excuses, and we should.
You know what? I think if we list off maybe some of the top 5 that I recall hearing, that you recall hearing, then people realize that when they try and pitch that stuff, they're really just making excuses. They don't. That the Nick bitch is whispering to them again, and they don't realize it.
Yeah.
I love I don't need all this drama. That was like number 1.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if I don't have that list someplace.
I'd love to see it again.
Yeah. I don't know if I can find it here now or not. So what are some more?
I don't have time. You already brought that one up earlier.
Yep.
Which everybody knows it's just that's a crock of shit.
Yep. It's a cop out.
You're not telling me anything I don't already know.
Yeah. I don't need you all.
Yeah. Oh my God. Which just by typing that's it's contradictory, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you I don't need you all, but if I didn't need you all, I wouldn't be typing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bunch of crap. I hated that one. Let's see here. I can do this on my own.
Yeah. Which is a variation of I don't need you.
It's actually a very typical one in the 20s, in the day 20 to day 30 time frame. Is I can do this on my own, because the honeymoon phase is over. They're feeling great until they're not.
Well, I've got a lot of documents in my folder that's called KTC, but I don't see one with the excuses in it.
It's a hell of a list. And I think that was one that we created where everybody was chiming in, so the list built.
Yeah, we were trying to do it like roll call, where you would copy and paste it and add to it.
Or like a vortex.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's the way we were doing it.
But
there is a ton of excuses, and it becomes like so cliche after a minute, when you get a new guy that comes in and they start spouting them, and you're like, and it's interesting because it comes off like they've invented these excuses,
They think they have.
Yeah, I'm brand new here, and I know how to do this.
I just needed to get past the first couple days.
Yeah,
that's all I needed.
Yeah, that's another good one.
Okay, this is why I used to laugh at these people, and I'm sorry, it's not a laughable thing, really, but okay, when I was in command of my company, there was 200 soldiers in my company. Young captain, right? And right across the hallway from me was my first sergeant. This guy, okay, think about the most senior NCO you can think of. He's got 20, maybe 30 years in the service, or in that ballpark. So he's not dumb. He lived the life of an enlisted soldier. So we get soldiers that would get in trouble. They'd come in. We'd have what's called night court, right? I'm the judge. The first sergeant is both the prosecutor and the defense attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got young soldier who is 19, maybe early 20s, trying to tell us a story, right?
Right.
I'd be looking at the first sergeant who's standing behind the soldier standing in front of my desk. I look at the sergeant, at my first sergeant, and he's rolling his eyes. And I'm like, okay, this just confirmed it for me. And I look right at the private or specialist, go, look, you must think we're pretty freaking stupid. I've got a first sergeant with 20 years who's been there, done it. He's got every T-shirt in the book, and you think you're going to tell me something that I've never heard of before? Get over yourself.
Yeah.
We've lived it. And they would look at you like, no, this is true. This really happened. No, it didn't. You think you're coming up with an excuse that me and the first sergeant have never heard of before? Get over yourself. And it's the same thing with quitters.
Yep. They come in singing the same old song. They think they wrote it.
Yeah, I'm so new. You've never run across anybody like me before.
Yeah.
Dude, I was you 20 years ago. I'm not that stupid.
I had a really good friend, and there's some, you can find this, when you go on the internet, you can find what you're looking for. That said that nicotine has actually been found to be a benefit in certain things, like they supposedly, like Parkinson's, it's supposed to do some things that's positive for that. But so that's another one of the avenues you hear people, that not necessarily people who are quitting, but people who are flirting with it or quit curious, will find these other little things about how it's not really the nicotine that kills you. And that is usually true. It's not the actual chemical that generally gets us, but it's the delivery methods that end up getting us. It's the smoking, it's the dipping.
Right.
I was looking on the internet just a second ago because I wanted to come up with this number because we hear so much about this opioid epidemic we have in the world today. And, I don't know. The last numbers I heard were someplace around 30 to 50,000 people a year are dying from opioid use. And this article that I've pulled up here, and again, you can find what you're looking for. This is from the U.S. National Library of Medicine, the National Institution of Health. That sounds like a fairly reputable source. And it's got a great name. Got footnotes and all kinds of things. Says here that I went up and lost it. Give me just a second here. 1.7 million. Hold on, where's it at? Damn it. I shouldn't have scrolled up to see what the top said. I had it sitting here right here at my deal, and I lost it. But the fact, so where I'm going here is that what we have, if opioid is an epidemic, I don't know a strong enough word to talk about how many people are dying from the use of this chemical.
It's gosh.
Damn it.
Is there something worse than epidemic? Pandemic?
Is that one?
Well, pandemic just means it's gone around the globe.
1.27 billion tobacco users worldwide. Just users. Tobacco consumption alone accounts for nearly 5.4 million deaths a year. of the 1 billion people who may die in a that's a different thing.
Well, I guess the issue, what it boils down to is, yes, while the delivery methods are what's killing you, the only reason you're still on that delivery method is because you're hooked on the chemical nicotine. Because, well, this is going to kill you. If you weren't addicted to it, you go, oh, well, I better stop.
Yeah. Yep, you would. And you're right. It's not the it's not the delivery method that causes the addiction. It's the actual chemical that's in there. We do have because some people think this is just breaking a habit. It's just a bad habit we got to break, and it's not. It's an addiction. Now you may have the habit of thumbing a big dip into your lip, and you may have a habit of standing around smoking.
Yeah, the oral fixation side.
Yeah. But the chemical itself is what has its hooks in you, and it is such a nicotine in very low levels is deadly by itself. In very low levels, you do not have to have much nicotine to kill you. So what we're actually getting delivered to us is minuscule amounts altogether, which all in all means nothing. We're hooked on this thing that, frankly, one of the things that really hit me early on too, when I started hearing people share their experience, was the fact of how much time they were losing using. Mm-hmm. And like how it would, like specifically people who were like ninja dippers that was running off and hide. They would like, they were losing time with their wife and kids.
Yes.
With their loved ones, because of slipping off to use.
I'm raising my hand. I'm guilty as hell.
And that's, that had not, I knew I was losing time with my kids when I was doping and drinking, but I didn't think about the fact that I was losing time using nicotine.
Yeah, we justified it by saying, well, I just don't want my kids to see me do it.
Yeah.
Okay, gee, how big a dumbass do you have to be? Why don't you just not do it at all and spend all this time with your kids? I was too fucking stupid. I admit it. But, I guess the essence is, that's why it's a hard sell to some people to call it an addiction. Because to them, addiction, okay, the opioid, epidemic, that to them is an addiction.
Right.
Alcohol. Hell, how long did it take for people to realize alcoholism is a disease born of an addiction?
Right, yeah.
That took a long time.
Yep.
And here we are trying to tell people that nicotine is just as destructive, is really a chemical addiction that will lead to your death. My brother's signature block, when he was still on that on KTC, had the quote from some doctor that nicotine is the only drug that, if used as directed, will kill you.
Yeah.
You can't argue with that, because that's exactly what it is. It will kill you.
Yeah. It's interesting that you can pick up a substance that says that plainly on the label and go, okay. I'm
cool with that.
Yeah. All right. I'm willing. What it is it won't. It's that terminal uniqueness that we tend to have, that it won't get me. It'll kill millions of other people, but not me.
Yeah. Killed my mom. Killed my dad. Killed 3 of my 4 grandparents. But for some reason, I'm immune.
Yep. Yeah, and that's another thing, man. You watched it happen to your loved ones, and still yet continue to use that substance, and that's insanity. That's well, you were talking a minute ago about it's fairly recent information that alcoholism is a disease. I mean, we've known that for some time now, but in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty new. 100 years ago, they put you in an asylum when you were an alcoholic because they thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
Not sick, but crazy. And reading that can or that label on the side of the pack of cigarettes, and seeing that it says it will kill you, and having lost loved ones due to it, I still will open up the pack and fire one up.
Yep, I'm different. They didn't have me in mind when they put those warnings on the label.
Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah, and, we got this whole, addiction also is found. There is a genetic issue to it. So you actually pick it, you pick that up through your genes. So like knowing that mom and dad were addicts of nicotine, and knowing, because I can't remember what there's a stat out there someplace, and it comes if one of your parents is an addict, then you have a 50% chance of being an addict also. If both of them are, it's like 90.
Yeah, you're pretty much doomed.
Yeah, and yet we still pick it up. And people say that nicotine doesn't do anything to you too, right? Like when I drink, I get drunk. When I use drugs, I get high. When I use nicotine, I don't get anything, right? I don't really think I'm getting anything anymore. Once I'm down the path, in the beginning I did. I remember in the very beginning getting so high off a cigarette that I had to lean and sit against a wall because I thought I was going to fall down.
Yep.
And then the next day I wanted that high again, and it wasn't as good the second day. And then before long, you're not getting anything off of it.
That you can feel.
Can feel until you stop.
Or until you start actually during your annual doctor's visits, and they're going, wow, your blood pressure seems to be up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an indicator right there. Your cholesterol is going through the top. What's this about? Another indicator.
Yeah.
But of course, we go, well, I'm just getting older. I'm in a high-stress job.
Yeah.
Which, for military, that's just what we're going to say. I'm in a high-stress job. No wonder I got high blood pressure. Well, Jesus, why would I keep on doing something that has a direct contribution to high blood pressure?
Yep. Because you are addicted.
Yeah, I'm a dick.
Addicted.
I mean, I'm going to drink and smoke and dip and think that my heart is not going to eventually explode in my chest.
One of my very favorite AA speakers who has passed now, his name was Bob Earl, and he was breaking all kinds of rules when it came. And actually, for a while, he was ostracized and wasn't allowed to speak for AA anymore because he was talking about too many outside issues, and one of them was smoking. And there's a particular tape where he talks about quitting smoking, and he gets heckled in the audience.
Oh, jeez.
And this was like I think this was in the late 70s. That's how long ago it was that he was beating that drum. And as we know, AA is notorious for smokers. My first meetings I went to when I was 16 years old, the only thing I really remember is old men, coffee, and cigarette smoke. Mm-hmm. It was a room where you ever see when you get the thermocline going on in a room where there's a layer of smoke that hangs X many feet off the ground, about 5 feet off the ground, there's a wall. And if you're below that, you can see, and if you stick your head up in it, it's like being in the clouds. That is what I remember. And he was talking about that. But one of the things when he was talking, he went someplace, and they told him that it was basically like putting a gun to your head and shooting yourself in the head with a little bitty gun every time. It was smoking was very, very slow suicide is what it is.
Sure it is. Absolutely. And no different than any other delivery method. And I guess they're finding the science to support that about vaping too.
Yep. Yeah, we're going to find that, what they used to have commercials of doctors and lab coats telling you to smoke, that it was okay. And I think we're probably going to find the same thing out about vaping as soon as the jury comes in and we get some time under our belt where people are going to start seeing the effects of what vaping is doing to people.
Yeah, what they'll find out. And this guy I've rode with in the when I was a lineman for the phone company, he went from smoking American Eagle cigarettes, which they
organic.
Oh my God! And it stunk to holy hell. My God, Joe, how can you smoke this shit? And I'm a Marlboro Light guy, and so as we're working a line, we're like freaking chimneys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he got smart. Well, at the time, I thought, and it's still smarter than smoking those American Eagles. I guarantee you this. But he became a vapor, and I'm like, I applauded him. That's a big step. But kind of like some of our buddies, they were really cranking up the nicotine content.
Yeah, right.
What was it, Amp? Amp was doing that.
Yep. 20. And I went through a big vaping phase also. He was doing, I think it's 25 milligrams per milliliter was the strength of it, of what he was vaping.
Yeah, that's what he was. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's up in the neighborhood of what dipping does to you. And it's someplace north of what a full strength regular Marlboro is.
Well, the way Amp described it, he was definitely as juiced, if not more, than I was.
Yep.
And watching my buddy Joe go through this, he would constantly say, "I'm just inhaling water vapor."
Yep.
I'm like, Joe, there's got to be more to it because you are putting a chemical into this.
Yeah.
And he still does it, and God bless him. He's not going to die of not hacking up a lung. I hope.
Yeah, we don't know that yet.
We just don't know it yet. But it's just interesting that he was my exposure to where the nicotine addiction is going. You see what I'm saying? That we're heavy duty smokers and dippers, and then all of a sudden we're going to find a new avenue because of the promises that it's not as bad for you, or it's even better for you. Remember the old quit plans? Well, I'm gonna quit smoking and I'm gonna start chewing. Then after chewing, I'm gonna go to cigars. After cigars, I'm gonna go to, those whole progressive plans.
Yep, I had one.
And that shit was born in the 70s and 80s, and people still think it's valid. That I'm just gonna cut down and eventually I'll be done. No, you're not gonna be done until this shit's out of your system for a good little while. But
we have a school thing that popped up the other day, and that they invited all the parents to come to my kid's school to talk about the dangers of vaping and these Juuls. You know what? You've seen that JULE, I think they're called. Mm-hmm. That are a real, I think they're not as discreet as they were just months ago, but a very discreet way to vape without, especially for kids.
Yeah, well, those fuckers are targeting the military now, and I take personal issue with that. The having so-called vets, and you don't know if they are or not. They're actors, for all you know. Yep. And saying, well, when I was in, it was standard that this is just what we did. But then as I transitioned out, that's a catchphrase, transitioned out. We don't retire, we don't ETS, we don't leave, we transition. We transition out of the military into civilian society where nobody understands us. So we're transitioning. And the only way I could adequately transition my nicotine use was to use my Juul electronic cigarette. You fuckers. How dare you? Pushing the nicotine addiction. Just quit, guys. Just quit. You're better off.
Yeah, I do. My little John, when my son was born, I actually quit smoking. in 2003. And it took a little while, but what I did, that's when I became a daily dipper. I keep accidentally pushing my microphone away from me. And that's when I transitioned to being a daily dipper. I didn't dip all the time prior to that. And later on, I had a little jaunt in a rehab joint, and I picked up smoking again. And I smoked in 2013, 10 years later, I picked up smoking. And what I did to stop smoking was I started vaping. And I'm dipping the whole while. So all I'm doing is doubling up, like you were saying earlier. I joke around. I could have a patch on, a can of dip in my back pocket, my vape in my other back pocket, and a pack of cigarettes in my breast pocket. Make sure I have all my bases covered. I wasn't going to make sure that under any circumstances I would have a way to get nicotine into my body. I'm surprised people aren't doing it intravenously. But I did. What I did note when I switched from smoking for about 6 months to vaping is I went through the same kind of withdrawal thing as I did when I quit smoking the first time of coughing up the junk, clearing your system, and because I did that, that gave me good enough that gave me excuse to keep on using, because I was telling myself, well, it was switching to vaping was just like quitting smoking. And that justification and rationalization we'll do in order to continue to use. And another thing that really got to me on the vaping later on was the anxiety that would happen when I would start running low on juice.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Or you carry spare batteries and a battery charger around with you. And it's like, you mind if I plug this in over here at your house? You go someplace and you're making sure that you have freshly charged batteries with you, and the anxiety that would happen when I was out someplace and I slipped up, I wasn't expecting to be gone this long or whatever. And
the job on the line took too long, and my battery died.
Yep, I ended up working late, and I'm now moderating my e-cigarette because my batteries are low. So and the problem there was what got to me was the obsession with it. That's all I could think about was that my batteries were dying. I was ready. I live a half hour from my workplace. And I'm thinking about driving home, slipping out of work and driving home to get batteries, or going down the road and buy a brand new one so I didn't have to go all the way home.
I know, man. I know. Hey, Joe, hurry up. Finish placing that fucking fiber. I got to go to the 7-Eleven and get me some cigs. I'm almost out. My battery's dead. Oh, my God.
It's interesting how... another thing I've said, the government tells us don't do drugs, except for theirs.
Yeah, except for this one. I mean, this is fine.
Yeah. Alcohol and nicotine. They get a cut of that. They don't want you stopping that.
Well, I will say this. You know what, Uncle Sam, in this case, I don't think it needs to be made illegal. I think they need to stay the fuck out of people's lives in this regard.
Yeah,
but
making things illegal has never worked before.
No, it doesn't work. So they need to shut the hell up. Quit telling me I'm evil. Quit telling me I can't smoke outside. Well, even though I don't smoke anymore, don't tell me I can't smoke outside.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so holier than thou. Well, maybe you got a habit I don't like. I don't like you picking your nose. Well, not you, Dan, but
I like, how did you see me?
You can't pick your nose in Central Park, damn it. That's a ticket. That's $100 fine right there. Yeah, you can't pay it? Okay, overnight in jail. Off you go to the clink.
I don't know if it's a nationwide law or what, but there's around here you can't smoke within 8 foot of a door.
The differences or the distances change, but I think pretty much every state has a regulation of that along those lines. I know the military definitely does. It's like 25 feet, some crazy number like that.
It's interesting we come up with 8 foot here in Indiana. I carry a tape measure with me.
Well, it maybe 8. It's the magical number 8. 0.08 alcohol.
Maybe
8 feet from the door. Maybe that's it.
That's another thing we were talking about. Another friend of mine was talking about when we were. I see now and again these people that claim they're social smokers, and I don't. I'm interested in knowing what that means. I know some people have done that. I had one podcast guest not too long ago said that he smoked socially, and when he stopped drinking, he just stopped smoking because he wasn't. And so I think maybe smoking socially means I only smoke when I drink.
Pretty much, or if you're at a party.
Yeah.
But if you're at a party, you're probably drinking.
So it's interesting that my buddy Tom put down the nicotine. It didn't have him. Now, other substances had him, but he just walked away from nicotine. Just flat out. No work, no anything. He just did that. And I have an uncle that goes down to deer camp or goes down to Fargo with us, and he did the same thing. He just put down the cigarettes one day. I'm not capable of doing that.
No. I have only known in my lifetime, and it doesn't mean there aren't more, but in my circles, I've only known 2 people capable of doing that. And I was stunned. I'm like, what do you mean? Are you sure you can do that? And that, you know what, hat tip to them.
Yep.
But I think they're more the exception than the rule.
Yeah, well, we're wired for certain, whatever that drug of choice kind of thing is, and you'd like maybe I might want to reject that premise that nicotine was one of my drugs of choice, but frankly, it was. Some people don't. Some people find their drug of choice in gambling or sex, or and I have gambled, but I didn't get addicted to it, and so I suppose I kind of chalk it up to the same kind of thing as that. It just didn't put its hooks in me the way that other substances put its hooks in me.
Yeah, and I can see that. I actually understand how people could get hooked on that.
On the gambling?
On the gambling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a constant, I know if I play one more hand.
Yeah, it's adrenaline rush.
Yeah. Or, you know what? I've lost 5 in a row. I've got to win. The odds are in my favor, you think, right?
Yeah. The more you lose, you got to have one win sometime down the road.
Yeah. And so it keeps on baiting you. It's like, for some people, alcohol or drugs is, once I get that perfect high, or, I'm just waiting for that next good party. After that, I'll quit. Or something along those lines.
Yeah, we always draw a line out there and say when this happens or when that happens. And that's what I said. When my son was born, I actually said I would quit smoking. And I did. But I did not quit using the drug.
It was there.
It was... I drew a line in the sand, and I vaguely remember that, and it was another one of those deals where, I didn't just put them down one day. I still smoked a little bit, and then eventually I ended up stopping. And I can't imagine smoking one now. And I remember the way I drank, and then when I would smoke a pack or 2 of cigarettes in the evening while I was drinking hard, how much that added to how bad I felt the next morning.
Yeah, the nicotine hangover, it does exist. Without alcohol, it can be there.
And a sore throat. And, I'll just speak my truth today. One of the other things is when I have podcast guests on that smoke, I hear that constant clearing of their throat in the podcast when I listen to it later.
You put your finger on it.
Yeah, you can hear that.
It's true. It's true. But, I guess it all boils down to, hey, folks, you know what? This is normal. If you're going to quit, these feelings are normal. These thoughts are all normal.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter how many days you got. Eventually, you'll be thinking and talking like us because we all went down that same path.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. There's a lot. The world is changing. And there's a lot less people smoking today than there used to be. I went and did that men's work weekend, and there was 15 of us in that group, and one smoker. Which that's and the other thing I thought because we were waiting on him to take his smoke breaks, and while the rest of us are ready to continue, we'd have to hit the pause button while this guy went out and had a smoke break. So you definitely see a lot less. And when I was still working at my previous job, the amount of people who were outside of the smoking area, because I would walk out. One of my best friends there smoked, and I would sometimes just take a break with him and go outside and stand around with him while he smoked a cigarette.
Yeah, standing upwind.
Yeah, and but the smoking area is a lot less populated today than they used to be.
I was actually surprised when I was doing the work as a lineman, how many guys didn't smoke. How many of the seniors didn't smoke. The smokers were in us, the new blood. I couldn't reconcile that in my head. I thought walking in as a smoker, I'd just have, I'd be surrounded by, guys that did it all the time. When in actuality, on the team that I was on, it was just Joe and I as the heavy duty smoke. Well, me, Joe, and Keith. Out of a team of, I think there was 9 of us. It was just surprising. It was the exact opposite ratio than I expected, which is good for them. I mean, hell, that job's going to kill you. Line work can kill you, right? You could do everything right and still die. That's how dangerous being a lineman is, whether you're an electrical lineman or communications. It can kill you in a heartbeat. And, I mean, you watch any of those guys in the movies doing that same kind of work. They're smoking like chimneys. Just like you watch any war movies.
Yeah.
World War II war movies, the old ones. Everybody is smoking and fighting over their packs of Lucky Strikes and whatnot.
Yep. And they got that cigarette hanging out of their lips.
Yep. And I thought I was cool. Well, I didn't think I know I was cool. Right. I look cool.
Yeah.
Just
like me and my pacifier.
And that's why every time I see that, you reposted it, maybe last month?
Yeah, sometime.
I still busted a gut because I knew. I was like, he's not just making a point. He's kind of mocking the macho aspect of the oral fixation.
Yep. Like you said, I knew I was cool standing around smoking. I was getting ready to bite my tongue. So I played around on this dating site, and almost without a hitch, they all say, smoking off limits. If you are a smoker, do not contact me. If you are a smoker, do not contact me. I thought I looked cool. I thought I was attracting women back then by smoking.
Yeah. Because you're a tough guy.
Yeah.
A bad boy.
What James Dean kind of kicked back with a pack of cigarettes. Remember, roll them up in your T-shirt? I wasn't old enough to do that. But I remember seeing that image. So I think we ought to wrap this thing up, man. But what I want to do is kind of put a call to action out there for anybody that is looking to maybe take that out of their life. Would you say add it to your recovery roster, or if you're not, I look at recovery as my favorite definition is to regain or reclaim that which was lost or stolen. And frankly, that nicotine addiction steals a lot from you, and it'll eventually steal your life. So if you want to, if you're interested in possibly putting down the nicotine, we have we have a way to do that, and it's the same thing we say in 12-step circles. It's simple, but it's not easy. Of coming and doing this thing in a we environment. I could never stop on my own, but we seem to be able to. So those multiple avenues there that I listed earlier to be able to contact me, you can do that. You can find me on Facebook or find me on at my dtmww.net site or spiritualunderground.org. All those places have ways to get a hold of me, and if you're interested, it's a one, I do struggle with helping people with their drug and alcohol use when I'm not local to you. That is not a barrier. I don't think it's a barrier there either. I think that's a little bit of an old idea. But it's not a barrier in this nicotine cessation thing. It does not matter where you live. In our quit group, we had a guy who lived in Japan. Oh, yeah. And the best of my knowledge, Gatorade is still quit today. Every once in a while, I will touch base with him, and he is. We got a guy. Another one of the guys is in Hawaii, so we're spread out all over the world, and it doesn't matter where you're at. If you want to join us in this journey of setting nicotine down and getting it out of our lives, we have a way to do that worked for us, and we're willing to share. We actually need to share it with you. I will rephrase that. I need new quitters in my life.
Damn right.
So that, I remember what it was like, so I don't get complacent. And B, I'm a firm believer that you have to give it away to keep it. I have to give this thing away in order to continue to have it, to remain quit.
Yeah, keep participating.
Yeah. So, final thoughts, brother?
No, I think we really had some great discussion here. A lot of fantastic takeaways. If for people that are just starting out, or for those that are undecided, I think just looking across the table and seeing the healthy attitude of somebody that's quit goes a long way.
Yeah, if you're quit curious, and that's the way, that's the way Kevin came in. He wasn't sure he wanted to quit yet. He was doing the moderation thing.
And boy, talk about somebody that just jumped in. That was awesome.
Yeah, he came in and was doing a step-down method. And I know we're kind of reversing, but he decided to do that. And after talking to us, he just finally said, hell with it. I'm quitting. And posted a day 1. And I believe today is his day 32. So, super cool. And hope we continue to attract more and more new quitters and help people.
Yeah, like you said, I need them. Just so there's that feeling of helping. And what did you say? I think you said it early on, you bring it up multiple times in your podcast. It just, if we can reach one guy.
Yep, just one.
Not one guy, one quitter. If we can reach one person, that means the world to me. So.
Yep. And our hour this morning is well worth every minute of it if we can touch one person and they can say yes, me too. I want that. I want that also. That
absolutely.
Quit state of mind.
So thanks for having me back. This was great.
Yeah. It's something dear to my heart, and you've I've said before have more quit knowledge than anybody I know. And so you're my resident professional whenever we're doing this kind of stuff, because I need you as a co-host in the nicotine cessation world. Although I feel pretty solid in it, you're my guy.
I love being here.
So with that, we will close this thing up. I'll change it up just a little bit today, because I actually, I lifted this from someplace else, but I used to say this too, man. If you're not having fun and you're quit today, it's your own damn fault. Thank you all for allowing Jim and I to participate in our quit in this manner today. Peace out.
just who they wanted. Always tried to do everything they said, only did the things they would approve of. Lock away all your dreams inside your head. Year after year you try to be a good girl. They never failed to point out when you were bad. Stuck to the program like a robot. Became a trophy for mom and dad. But inside you want more. Everything you've been waiting for. Looking for that open door. So every day in your head, in your heart just keeps saying, let go and fly. Let go and fly. Spread your wings to the sky. Let go and fly. Ever since